Welcome in to another episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast. I am your host, Benjamin Wolk, live from Sanford Stadium. I'm joined by Kipp Adams. As always with these post-game reaction episodes, it remains to be seen whether we'll get Jordan Hill or not. It just sort of depends on how things shake out, but he's down there with Kirby Smart right now. Olivia Sayers down there with Kirby Smart right now. I just left some of the player interviews as well. So Georgia 35, Kentucky 14. I don't really know how many takeaways you can have from a game like this as it unfolded, but we'll go through some of the stats of everything. We'll go through some of the key moments, things that stood out to both of us. Before I get into all of that stat rundown, Kipp, just what's your 30,000-foot view takeaway from this game, if you can even have one?
We thought this would be a get-right game for Georgia, and I think for the most part that held true in this game. Overall, Georgia got what it needed to get, and barring some injuries, kind of got everything they could have hoped for heading into what we know are going to be more difficult games.
No, I agree completely. I guess my biggest surprise from the game was that Mark Stoops didn't go for two there at the end to try and cover the 20.5-point spread based on what I know about Mark Stoops and him wanting to prove things through a cover. I thought that was in the cards. I looked for a second like he was going to bring that 2-point team out, and then he didn't. He ended up bringing the extra point team out. So, for anybody that has been waiting all year for Georgia to cover a spread, you finally got it.
Yeah, I got my first maybe troubling text from my older son Sebastian was asking, are they is Georgia not going to cover the spread here at the end? And then a couple texts later, I felt I caught my breath a little bit, and he didn't actually know the correct he actually didn't know the line. He thought it was 22.5, and so I felt a little bit better knowing that he did not know the spread there. But it was, in the end, when spreads are over 20 points, I don't think whether or not you cover is really the biggest storyline in a game like this, which goes to your point that there might not be a lot you can take from this game if you're Georgia. But at the same time, there were several firsts in this game. Georgia was able to get a couple firsts that we've been waiting on all season. So I do still think that there are positives that you could take away heading into another SEC game.
We'll get into that because I know where you're going with that. And so what we'll do, typically we kind of just run through the stats. What we're going to do this time, because I think that there's a little bit less to talk about from the game itself, we're going to go piece by piece. So we'll talk about each statistical area, and then we'll talk about things that are relevant to that. So Gunnar Stockton, 15 of 23, 196 yards, 1 touchdown. What I would describe as an uncharacteristic interception, just because you don't see Gunners really heaving it up into something that just didn't seem to be there very often. Maybe the Gunner's not taking enough shots or being aggressive enough was getting in his ear a little bit. I don't know. But otherwise, a pretty Gunnar Stockton game for Gunnar Stockton. Ryan Puglisi gets in the game there. End of third quarter, really, for those last two possessions. 3 for 4, 49 yards. They have the fourth down conversion that stalls out. Thought the ball was moving pretty well there before that. Throws this kind of sloppy interception that gives Kentucky. And that, like, if we're being real about, I know people see Ryan Puglisi come in, hits Elias Williams a couple of times. Looks like they're moving the ball. What we saw there on the overthrow in your own territory, a little bit reckless turnover, like that's why Georgia feels more comfortable with Gunnar Stockton right now than they would with Ryan Puglisi. Sort of a similar question to what I asked before. Can we make anything of the Georgia passing game from this one, Kipp?
That it's still really kind of not where it needs to be overall, I think. They had some very telling stats early in the broadcast, is talking about how often Gunnar Stockton relies on the screen pass. Like there's, very few quarterbacks. I think there's only like 2 or 3 quarterbacks in FBS football who throw more screen passes than Gunnar Stockton does. And then his percentage of, passes over 15 yards is 14th in the SEC. I think they said there was only like 15 throws they said 22 throws over 15 yards. And I think that's still kind of where we're at for the most part. But I think you did see some play calls where it seemed like they were trying to get him to take some more chances, and he was able to reunite with Oscar Delp. So I think there are still some promising takeaways there, but at the same time, it's still kind of the short yardage passing game still seems to be the bread and butter for Georgia's offense right now. So I still think, yeah, the questions are going to remain until he's asked to or forced to try to stretch the field. We have yet to see it.
On the receiving front in this one, Dylan Bell, 4 catches for 68 yards. We'll get into Dylan Bell a little bit more. It was a little bit of a Dylan Bell game that we catch one of these every now and again, a Dylan Bell game. This was at least one that we'll see this season. Zachariah Branch, 4 catches for 18 yards. Thought Kentucky did a really good job of just not letting him get any space whatsoever. And anything. Elias Williams came in, 3 catches, 48 yards. Look, they weren't covering him very well, but when a guy that big and that athletic has as much room as he does, it's going to look very pretty. I think that probably made the Ryan Puglisi moments look even sharper, just with how freakish Elias Williams looks out there when he has a lot of grass to run on. London Humphreys, 2 catches for 35 yards. Oscar Delp gets involved for a 36-yard catch that gets down inside the 10-yard line. Cash Jones, we might talk about this a little bit more too. Cash Jones seems like Kirby Smart. Why don't we just talk about it? Did you think stubborn Kirby Smart came out and was like, I don't care that we're inside the 10-yard line. We're getting Cash Jones the ball. We're going to hurry up, toss to Cash. Didn't work. Doesn't matter. 3rd and 12 a few plays later, get it back to him again.
I think most people who are paying attention would tell you Cash Jones is a hell of a receiving back. The argument remains, how many handoffs you giving him when you still have, what Chauncey Bowens and Nate Frazier are able to do in this offense. So I think if you're using them the way that it seems like at this point, it's his strength. I mean, if you have one skill set, but you're really good at it, then that should be your skill set. And yeah, I mean, Cash got the angle and got to the end zone. And yes, it made Bobo and Kirby Smart look good there. It's kind of the plays that, before and after when you start handing him the ball in short yardage situations or in 3rd down, where people are like, yeah, this is probably not the most efficient use of your cash.
They also, I will note, not to, bring up bad memories, but they were 0 for 2 today, hurry up, trying to run the ball. So now, granted, they slowed it down and they gave it to Josh McCray on Ryan Puglisi's 4th down, and it also didn't convert. So maybe Georgia just has inside the 15 running the football issues that we need to talk about a little bit more. But speaking of running the football, it was another good day for Georgia. I mean, only averaged 4 yards per carry, so not as explosive necessarily in the run game as they have been in some recent ones. But Chauncey Bowens was the lead back in this one, 15 carries, 70 yards. Gunnar Stockton does some good things on his legs, especially those first 2 touchdown drives of the game, to really, without great blocking, make a couple of guys miss and find his way into the end zone. 6 carries, 48 yards, 2 touchdowns. Nate Frazier is not completely in the doghouse. He's taken a back seat to Chauncey Bowens, but he still got in the game. 7 carries, 34 yards. They had him in some moments where I don't think you want to just throw Nate Frazier in having not played. Like when you go to Auburn next week or you come back home against Ole Miss, you don't want Nate Frazier touching the ball for the first time since the Alabama game if you're planning to use him in those spots. So get him some run against Kentucky, but still clearly earning his way back into being lead back. Josh McCray continues to be the situational back that he's been this season, only 5 carries for 13 yards, but picked up some first downs. And then Dylan Bell, 2 carries, 6 yards, both go for touchdowns. We already brought up that he was the leading receiver today. I brought up that this was the Dylan Bell game. I just got a chance to talk with him for a little bit down at player interviews. So go to Dogs 24/7 after this and subscribe, because I'll have some more from Dylan Bell after that. Kipp, I mean, I know some people were saying maybe to shelve 86 at points earlier this season. I don't think you should be shelving 86 right now.
I was going to say it goes back to how are you using them? And in the run game, giving them a couple handoffs a game does seem like the proper utilization of Dylan Bell's skill set. That catch kind of changed things for me, because I'll be honest, like, we haven't seen that version of Dylan Bell, not this season and kind of not in a while. So if those are the kinds of plays he can make downfield, Georgia's passing attack desperately needs that kind of, just playmaker, someone you can rely on, because that was a tough catch to make. It was good coverage, and Dylan Bell went up and got it anyway. So I think overall you can make the case that was the most impressive play in the game. And Dylan Bell had a hell of a week when Georgia's offense needed it most.
Good throw from Gunnar Stockton too. I mean, I will say, for the criticisms fairly that he's received in the passing game at times throughout this year, his touch and accuracy on those perimeter balls outside the numbers down the field, I mean, it's not necessarily the offensive style that Georgia wants to live in, but pounding the rock and hitting deep shot explosives, I think that's going to be Georgia's best bet offensively to be able to be dynamic enough to win some of these games down the stretch that it's going to have to. Putting a wrap on the offensive side of the ball was 425 total yards, 245 passing, 180 rushing. Not as clean penalty-wise. 7 penalties for 58 yards has been something that they've run into a couple of times, but 26 first downs, 9 of 12 on third down, really, really sharp on third down, was 0 for 1 on the one fourth down attempt, but 6 yards per play. I think that Georgia's got to be happy with that one. Any other thoughts on the offensive side of the ball, Kipp, before we pivot over to defense?
30 for 135 from your running backs. I think the rotation they have right now works really well, and I think it was strong for them to put Nate Frazier in the game as early as they did. You thought maybe he might be in there when it's well in hand, but I mean, he had his role change, but seemed to handle it really well. And you could tell he was making sure to, the ball security was at first and foremost, as far as him just not putting the ball on the ground again. You can work with that. And I think that's something to build on. But Chauncey, earned that start, seemed to do pretty well. And some of the best runs from Gunnar Stockton we've seen this year, a lot of times it looked like he needed to kind of pull the ball and go, and didn't, and called, into the wrong play. This time, the calls he made, the times that he tucked it and ran, looked to be the right decision almost every single time.
Flipping over to the defensive side of the ball, just some high-level stats. Kentucky goes for 270 yards of offense, 225 passing, 45 rushing. What I will say is, and look, I'm not saying Kentucky has the most potent running game that Georgia's going to face this year, but Georgia gave up 2 yards per carry in this one. I don't think anybody's going to have success running the ball on this Georgia team consistently this season. That is one part of this Georgia defense's identity that I believe in. But man, do they make a lot of different passing offenses look like they're having their best day of the season. I mean, we've now seen it 3 weeks in a row, really, that the opponent that Georgia played had its best. I don't want to say Alabama's was necessarily its best passing attack of the season, but it was probably their most efficient passing attack of the season outside of the ULM game. I mean, how much do we make of the fact that, even Boley was able to make Georgia's secondary or pass rush or a combination of it all look relatively pedestrian?
Yeah, I talked about that coming into this game, that we are looking at a Kentucky team that was averaging 159 passing yards and completing 50% of their passes coming into this game. And you wouldn't expect them to go over on both of those against a Georgia defense. But yet, Boley had 225 and completed 60% of his passes. I think it's a little bit of everything here. I think, again, the secondary is not playing fast. They are picking on some guys. Jonel Aguero got picked on a little bit. There was a busted coverage that led to an explosive play as well. And so at the end of the day, you're giving up a 38-yard pass to Kendrick Law on a busted coverage. You're giving up that 29-yard catch for Josh Caddis. Those are going to skew the numbers a little bit. Again, you take away those 2 plays, and I know that's taking away, broken plays that we're discussing, but that's 67 yards right there. And now you're right where you probably needed to be as a defense. And so I just think that this is kind of coming with the territory for a younger Georgia defense. It's being asked to do things that typically were done by 4th and 5th year players or 3rd to 5th year players in Georgia's defense before. So whether they need to schematically change things and allow your younger players to be put in better situations where they're not out there having to do as much assignment wise, or you just let them grow up, which seems to be what Georgia's doing. yeah, something's going to need to change. I think experience is going to really help with Georgia. And once these guys continue to get these snaps and continue to be asked to do the exact same thing, and they're going to grow into the role better, this is just the growing pains that you're going to get with a younger defense in the transfer portal era.
Yeah, I thought Georgia's defensive front was a little bit more disruptive today, maybe to be expected, obviously, just with the opponent that you're playing. But 5 tackles for loss, I think that's the second most so far this season. And as much as we've talked about the pass rush and the sacks, Georgia has not been getting negative yards, even in opponent run game. Like, they've been doing a good job of limiting explosives, not letting chunk runs get you, but they have not. They have been bottom in the Kirby Smart era in terms of negative plays on opponent run snaps. So 5 tackles for loss. CJ Allen was living back there a little bit. Justin Williams had one. Adrian Maddox had one on a little bit of a design, safety design. And then I want to say Nnamdi Ogboko, of course, which we got to talk about this one. We've had the broken record bold predictions for the last 3 weeks. Will Georgia finally get a sack from someone outside of its inside linebacker room? It got one early from CJ Allen to add to the inside linebacker room, contributing to it. But late in the fourth quarter, Nnamdi Ogboko, Kipp, I don't know if we would have done that exercise 100 times if we would have landed on Nnamdi Ogboko being Georgia's first defensive lineman to get a sack. Great play by him, great bend by him. He's actually shown some flashes at points this season, but nice for Georgia to finally get the monkey off its back on that one.
I was about to say, we got 12 guesses so far, and you probably could have given us at least another 12. His name would not have come up. I don't think we just would have went back to the well with the same guys that, figured to be in positions to be disruptive. But, yeah, congrats to, Mboko. If you're going to give your first sack from someone who's 6'4", 340 pounds, sure. That's a bonus. If you can get pressure with him consistently, probably going to have a pretty good day, because I don't know what his assignment was on the play, but I don't know if just collapsing the pocket and taking down the quarterback was number one, but I don't think they're going to complain either. In the film room, they'll probably show that and look to the rest of the guys and say, why can't we get this from you? And I'm still kind of wondering that. Is this what we're going to get from Georgia's defensive front throughout the season? Unlike the secondary where I said growing pains, I think this is Georgia's defense. I think this is going to be what the defensive front looks like, which means opponents are going to keep doing what the last couple teams have done against Georgia, which is what a lot of Georgia fans would hate to see from Mike Bobo, and that's spamming the screens. The quick passing game, getting the ball out quickly is how they're attacking Georgia's defense, because if it's 4 and 5 seconds back there, I do think Georgia gets home several more times. But that's how opponents are attacking Georgia. Never mind the fact that early in the season they were the ball wasn't even going 10 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. Some of these numbers are skewed by the opponent's attack. They're not trying to push the ball downfield, which doesn't lead to as many pressures. It's just the way it is. So it is making Georgia's defensive front just look a little bit less productive than it actually is. There's some game planning involved here that is allowing Georgia to keep players in front of them because the ball is coming out quicker.
I will note Georgia did win the turnover battle in this one. I think I'm seeing it on the stat sheet here that CJ Allen is being credited for the forced fumble. Was it not Chris Jones that punched it out?
Was it Kyron Jones? It was Chris Jones that pumped it out?
I thought it was.
I had CJ Allen on my end too. That's who I wrote down, that CJ Allen got it. But
I knew CJ recovered it. Maybe he forced it. I don't know. I thought it was Chris Jones punching it out from behind. But either way, Georgia forces a fumble. First one of the season where Georgia recovers a forced fumble. And then Ellis Robinson in the corner of the end zone on a kind of throw it up moment from Kentucky. Ellis has struggled a little bit, I would say, early on. And I think that Georgia's still trying to figure out that second cornerback position. We saw Jamelo Jones and Ellis Robinson kind of going back and forth today in terms of who's getting opportunities. Another day where we did not see Daniel Harris, which makes you start to wonder, what the future of that position looks like. But I think good all in all for Georgia to, create some pressures, get some tackles for loss, forced some turnovers. It wasn't an ideal defensive performance by any means, but outside of Ryan Puglisi giving a short field, Georgia was going to go another whole second half without giving up a point. If you could have pitched two back-to-back second half shutouts, I think you would have felt pretty good about that. All right, Kipp, I am going to hit us to a quick break. Jordan is not going to join us, but he has a couple updates on some players that I'm going to share with folks. We'll talk about what to look for from Georgia a little bit moving forward. And then, as always, even though it's earlier in the day, we'll talk about some scores that we've seen across college football already. We'll be right back. All right, Kipp. We don't have full updates necessarily on Monroe Freeling and Jordan Hall, but a couple of Georgia's trench guys got beat up during this one. It really wasn't just those two. I mean, Monroe Freeling goes out early in the game, ends up going back to the locker room, doesn't return. Kirby Smart has said in his post-game press conference via Jordan Hill that it is an ankle injury for Monroe Freeling. We don't know the extent of it or how long he will be out. I know that's something that Georgia is going to want to get corrected right away. Sounds from things like Jordan Hall just got banged up a little bit. When I had watched it live, I saw him go down. I thought he had just maybe gotten like a helmet to the knee or something like that. So it might have just been a pain tolerance thing in that moment. It looked like he was going to try and get up and walk it off. I think it was stinging him a little bit, but based on what Kirby Smart said post game, it sounds like he was nothing more than just a little bit banged up on that play. Micah Morris does go out with what looked to be some kind of shoulder injury or something like that at one point during the game, but he came back in, so I don't think that there's any cause for concern there. Kipp, how concerning, what's the panic level? I mean, we've talked a lot about the right side of the offensive line, some of the growing pains that are continue to go on there. When your left tackle then goes down, it only adds cause for concern. How concerning is it? And if it's not Monroe, what do you think Georgia's best options are on the offensive line moving forward?
Well, I thought, given the injuries, that the group actually held up fairly well. Micah Morris playing, through injury and making it work. I think that failed fourth down in the fourth quarter is kind of where you kind of saw it catch up to him a little bit, where Josh McCray's not able to get that first down. They got no movement on that play. They're asking a lot of the younger guys, and they're asking a lot of the guys that are in there. I think Drew Bobo, this is probably a game that he's not going to grade out very well. I think there were some, protection issues for him, probably more so than in recent games. But this is where it kind of has an effect, a trickle-down effect, because he's having to help out more inexperienced guys playing next to him and making sure his younger tackles are, have the right assignment, and it takes him away from his own assignment. I think that's kind of what you kind of saw here. So, they're running through some guys. I mean, you already have your backup, a backup center out in Malachi Tolliver. You got Ernest Green out as well. You're running through your depth chart right now. So they're probably hoping for good news on that front with Freeling and Micah Morris, because if you don't have those guys, then you still have guys who could step in. You got Bo Hughley. You get those early snaps to him are more important now, more valuable now. And I think Juan Gaston and him can hold up, but now you're an injury away from really having to put people out there like a Jaw Jackson, just guys that haven't been asked to play important snaps for Georgia yet. So getting those guys, not having those guys out will be very important. But I do think you did see a little bit of the impact of those injuries in this game. I think the offense still left some points out on the board, especially, like I said, with that fourth down play.
All right, I was going to ask you any parting thoughts from this one before we move on to scores around the country and start talking a little bit about what this means for next week. But I'll be honest with you, this feels like one of those games that just went the way that it was supposed to. I mean, I think the Vegas over-under was like 48. It was 49. Georgia was a 20.5 point favorite, and they won by 21. It basically was the predicted Vegas score for this game. It went as the game was supposed to go. Georgia took care of business. The things where Georgia has had some uncertainties, elite passing game, pass rush, being disruptive on defense, like all of those things showed up again today. And quite frankly, they're going to show up throughout the course of the season because, like Kipp said, certain things about this Georgia team, Gunnar Stockton is who Gunnar Stockton is. This pass rush is what this pass rush is. You have to live with those things. At this point, we don't need to talk about, oh, these things happened. This is who Georgia is, and Georgia can win every single game that it has on its schedule doing these things. You just have to play well in the right spots around it to be able to win every game that you have remaining. All right, Kipp, before we talk about next week and sort of close things down, I wanted to run through some scores. We are recording this, so if you're not listening live, this is at 4:15 p.m. Eastern time. A lot of really good football left to happen today, but while we're here, some games that are already complete, top 25 games. Cincinnati goes to at home, beats Iowa State 38-30. Iowa State goes down. I will say Cincinnati was favored by 1.5 in that one, so not really an upset, even though it was the number 14 team in the country going down. Michigan wins 24-10 against Wisconsin. Illinois wins 43-27 against Purdue. That's a more exciting score than you would probably think for an Illinois-Purdue game. Sounds like a potentially fun game. Ongoing right now, UCLA in Penn State territory, up 10-7. Can Nico Iamaleava get his first win at UCLA if he even gets a win this season? We'll see. Florida up 10-0 early on Texas. I guess a lot of people were picking Florida. The Vegas line clearly said that this game was going to be closer than you would maybe have thought if you were just, predicting the line before the week. Clearly they are seeing something. It looks like Texas is about to have to punt again. So that one might get interesting. I want to get out of Sanford Stadium so I can watch the rest of that one. Vanderbilt up 7-0 early on Alabama with the ball deep in Alabama territory. If Vanderbilt pulls that one off, people in Athens are going to be wondering what in the hell you have to do to beat that team in a Georgia jersey, but neither here nor there. Notre Dame up 6-0 early on Boise State. Looks like Louisville just tied it up 7-7 at the end of the first quarter against Virginia. Oklahoma 0-0 too early against Kent State to be able to say anything there. Anything out of that stand out to you, Kipp?
Well, I mean, we had the Heisman front runner race and going into the season, but Arch Manning and DJ Lagway are combined for 60 yards passing so far. I think Arch is he's averaging 3 yards per pass in that game. So you got that game kind of just being a comedy of errors for the most part. But I just want to say, like, Vanderbilt going into Tuscaloosa, okay, and Cedric Alexander ripping off a 65-yard run, and then you let Diego Pavia run for 36 yards as well. Those two explosives, really, I'm struggling to comprehend, as you said. And then Ty Simpson throwing a interception number 1 of the season as well. I think it's kind of mind blowing at this point, just what Vanderbilt has that not just Georgia. I mean, no team has the recipe. I need to text Barton Simmons and see like what he's got going on there, because it's working right now. That's about as strong of a first quarter as you could have if you're Vanderbilt. It's basically just the last year's game, extending at this point. So I have to just give credit to where it's due. They were not afraid of going into that environment and just playing the same football they've been playing.
Couple good games still to come tonight. I mean, Texas Tech plays at Houston. Ohio State hosts Minnesota. I think everyone's going to be watching that Miami-Florida State game at 7:30, and then Mississippi State, Texas A&M at the same time. Kipp, let's turn the page as like a final send-off for this Kentucky post-game reaction. Looking ahead to next week, Georgia's going to be going on the road, playing a night game at Auburn. place that Georgia always seems to have some headaches when it goes on the road there, but at the same time, it's, had the upper hand in this rivalry for quite some time now, really since that night game in 2017 at Auburn. What do you expect? I'm not asking you to make a prediction because we're going to talk plenty about it throughout the course of this week, but based on what you saw today, I guess coupling that with the last couple of weeks, what do you expect from Georgia when it goes to Auburn next week?
Well, the run game travels. I expect Georgia to try to run for 250 yards, and we are going to learn a lot about Georgia's defensive front because this Auburn offensive line is maybe the worst in pass protection in college football so far this year, wasting what may be the best wide receiving core in the SEC and having Jackson Arnold fighting for his life on a lot of snaps. So I think that in itself, I mean, you've had your secondary learning on the fly. Overall, I think Ellis Robinson had maybe his best game overall. He got beat early on, but playing much better in press coverage. He's going to be tested. If he's lined up against Malcolm Simmons, he's lined up against Cam Coleman, no matter who he's lined up against, it's going to be a big-time matchup. And I do think you saw Georgia not only just going nickel base, they were going dime a lot in this game and having 3 cornerbacks on the field. I felt like that was them giving getting prepared for next week's game and what they're going to face. So that is going to be very interesting for Georgia's defense. Can these guys actually get home and take advantage of what every other team has taken advantage of playing Auburn this season?
All right, Kipp, that's all for this one. Georgia 35, Kentucky 14. Georgia moves to 4-1. 2-1 in SEC play with a big road one. Really, these next two, I think if Georgia is going to accomplish what it wants to accomplish this season, it has to get to that second bye week with Alabama as the only loss. If you lose to Auburn next week or you come back home and lose your second home game of the season to Ole Miss, I'm not saying you can't get what you want from that, but it is going to be a heck of a lot harder. So these next 2 weeks, I think, will tell the story of the Georgia football season and what end results are possible from it. For Kipp Adams, for Jordan Hill and Olivia Sayer, who didn't join us but are working hard behind the scenes, please go subscribe to Dogs 24/7. We're going to have plenty of content coming out of this one and looking ahead to these next 2 big SEC matchups. So please jump in there. There was a bunch of recruits that were in town this weekend as well, so I'm sure that I'll have plenty that is coming out from that. And quite frankly, there were so many big recruits in town for the Alabama game. We are still getting reactions to that and where things stand with recruitments of guys that were there 2 games ago or last Saturday as well. So please check in with all of that. So for Kipp Adams, I'm your host, Benjamin Wolk, and we will see y'all next week.